You're watching the Mending Roots to Cultivate Communities telethon, coming live from the Denver Community Media Studios in downtown Denver.
Hi there, my name is Vic. I'm the president of the Giffords Gun Owners for Safety Colorado chapter and a proud board member of the Mending Roots Forest Project. In 2011, while meeting with her constituents at a grocery store in Tucson, Arizona, Gabby Gifford was shot in the head. 17 others were injured and 6 people died, including Christina Green, who was just 9 years old. Since that tragic day, Gabby has found the courage to learn how to read, write, and walk again. However, her recovery didn't stop there. She ended up launching a national movement to prevent gun violence in America. I'm happy to introduce you to Gabby as she talks about the importance of her fight.
It's time for courage. We must do something. We must stop gun violence. Protect our children, our future, let them lead the way. Make our country a safer place, a better place. Do you have the courage to fight? Please join your voice with mine.
My name is Jonathan McMillan, and I'm the co-chair of the community-led Youth Violence Prevention Initiative, Park Hill Strong, and I'm the Youth Violence Prevention Coordinator for the City and County of Denver, and I'm mending roots to cultivate communities. Being born and raised in Northeast Denver, I've personally known many young people who have lost their lives, and I've seen and felt the impact that violence has on other youth and our community. That's why I've committed myself to do what I can to make a difference.
And we are joined now in studio, right here on the Mending Roots to Cultivate Communities Telethon, by that man that you just saw that message from, Jonathan McMillan, the Youth Violence Prevention Coordinator for the City and County in Denver. Thanks for being here, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Real quick, before we get into it with you, can I say it, Sil? We're 5,000 in. We're 10% of our goal has been reached. $5,000 donated. See, that's what I'm talking about. Put your money where your mouth is, and I think in doing that, the monetary obviously benefits of donations is us reaching our goal, but it's more so affecting the heart enough to move and do something.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk about identifying some issues that play a part. And K-Tone, I want you to be in this conversation with me as well, with me and Jonathan as well. What part do you guys think our generation and the art form that we didn't pioneer, but definitely we brought to prominence, that being rap, hip hop. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about identifying issues in our communities, it's easy to say the single parent household. It's easy to say, socioeconomic status. Mm-hmm. What part does the art play? Because I watched something and it was with the Dante Wright case. Mm-hmm. When the other side of the conversation is bringing out defamatory, sort of imagery of the young man, and he's got guns in his hands, and he's a rapper, and he's just, what part does our culture play in this scourge of violence? I'm gonna start with you, John.
Oh man, that's such a complex question.
It is
such a complex issue, and I wish I could just say, oh, it doesn't or it does, but it's not that black and white. Like everything is, there's nuance about it. And I will do my best to be concise in saying, hip hop has traditionally been an expression, our artful expression of the cultural impacts that people of color, but particularly black people, have had to deal with.
Right.
You think of the breaks, right? You think of what's the song? The Message,
The
right?
Message, right.
You know, those were legendary and laid a groundwork where it made it okay to give voice to the things that we as Black people were struggling with. What I've seen it morph into is kind of like a gratuitous dramatization where, if I'm going to be real, the music industry, Hollywood,
Sure.
has figured out a way to monetize and use Black pain as entertainment that's
Say that.
culturally, it's a consumable now rather than, I think, just that authentic piece. And to go even just a step further into this, you know, you and I, we were talking, we're the same age.
Yeah, for sure.
And we grew up in an era where if you were a young Black male, we were considered an endangered species.
For sure.
And we heard this from our community leaders. We heard this from the media that we consume, whether it's music, movies, or whatever. And it reinforced the narrative that we didn't have a whole lot of options. And when you don't have a whole lot of options, I say it's a hopeless paradigm, because when you're hopeless, you act reckless.
Right.
And then you have young people out there who were, if they didn't have hope, they were living fast, dying young. They were doing the things that sent them to prison, sent them to the graveyard early, took them away from their children because they were either dead or locked up. And at some point, you have to interrupt and have a critical thought about what is the programming, and it literally is programming.
Off top.
What is the programming that is going into my hardware, and figure out, okay, maybe this is not necessarily a reality. So,
Toner, as a purveyor of I don't call it local. I don't like the word local. Independent.
I don't either.
Independent rap in Denver.
Yeah.
You're plugged in.
Right.
You know, and there is that point, right, where entertainment turns into messaging, where entertainment turns into influence.
Definitely.
What are your thoughts, first and foremost, on the part that hip hop plays, that rap plays in the conditions in our neighborhood? And second, how do you impart that to the people under your sphere of influence when they're bringing you their music? Or is it a conversation that you have?
You know, it's tricky for me, just because of the part I do play. But as far as you know, hip hop and the art, for a lot of us, that's all we know, and that's all we have. That's what we grew up on. I mean, hip hop is the culture. You know what I mean? So I feel like the hip hop influence is a major influence on, you know, a lot of the youth and people who listen to the music. And for me to say, I mean, I'm in agreement, you know, with the artists, and everybody has their own way of art. I mean, they can express, they could say whatever they want to say, but I would be a lie to say that the music doesn't play a part in influencing the mind. You know what I mean? Especially the younger the person. You know what I mean?
It also becomes a thing of imagery.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
A lot of the time, you know, you hear the song, and the song doesn't have to be going anywhere, but the imagery that we see
Definitely.
that accompanies it can have a large effect. Let's talk about, first and foremost, Park Hill Strong.
Yeah.
And the initiatives that you are championing to try and affect change in the community. How did you come about being involved with them, and also just the core of the mission?
You know, it's been an evolution. The journey of Jonathan has been an evolution. I grew up in Park Hill. I was born on 36th and Forest, grew up on 35th and Elm. And again, you know, talking about the era in which I came up, you know, I was out there running wild with the Park Hill boys, you know what I mean?
When the Holly was
Yeah. You know, I went from taking swim lessons at Skyland at 7, 8 years old to hanging out in the Holly and doing a whole lot of other stuff. And that behavior, and again, having that hopeless mentality and that reckless mentality led me to go to prison at 25.
Okay.
And as strange as it sounds, it was probably like the best experience for me because that was an opportunity for me to recognize that there was a much bigger plan at play that had so many of the people who I grew up with or knew just by 1 or 2 degrees of separation. We're all in the same pod. We're all in the same prison. And there was literally thousands of us like this in Colorado. And it just made me think, like, what am I should have more control over the choices and the lifestyle I'm living. And so I got out of prison in December 20th, 2000. And, it's been a 20-year journey, going on 20 and a half years, thankfully, of really being intentional about being a better person for myself, being a better person for my family, and a better person for my community. And so I've learned a lot about policy. I've learned a lot about the public health impact and public safety impact that violence has in our community. Just kind of bring it back to what you were saying. I mean, I was a rapper out there rapping about shooting and selling dope and all of that, and recognizing, like, if I could have influence on other people in a negative way, I can also help influence the growth of my community, growth of my neighborhood. And so probably about 6 years ago, time just is flown by so fast, got connected with Park Hill Strong, which is a community-led initiative that's backed by the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence at CU Boulder. Everything is based off a public health approach, which comes from the Center for Disease Control, where it recognizes that violence is, first off top, preventable.
Right.
And if you look at it like any communicable disease, a young person or any person is more likely to be impacted by violence or be affected by violence the more they're exposed to it.
That's right.
So if you if you identify the risk factors that exist in a community and you identify those protective factors that will help provide protection and resilience for a young person, if you amplify those, then you have a better chance of having healthy young people grow into whole, healthy, productive adults. And I was all for that. And don't get me wrong, I would never claim OG stripe status or any of that. But if I could be a leader for the young people who are in Park Hill in the greater Denver neighborhood and be a leader to help them stay off the path that I had to go down, then I'm not only dedicated to that, but that's my obligation, right? I have sons, I have nephews, I have sisters who have husbands. I mean, it's just it goes so wide and deep that to call myself a man, this is what I'm supposed to do.
I like how you called it the evolution of Jonathan McMillan. And I'll say it because of this reason. I'm not one of these people who believes that you have to be a pastor to stand in the pulpit.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it's experience that shapes some type of correlative message that people can actually grab a hold of. Because I can come from anywhere and start telling people how to live their lives. If they can't feel that I can feel their circumstances, those messages oftentimes fall on deaf ears. And I feel like that's, for the longest time, been kind of what's plagued a lot of our communities. We haven't tapped into the people like yourself. It's like, when you look at the cannabis industry, who better than to put at the head of it than somebody who went to jail for selling weed, right? You have experience in the field.
Definitely.
And so when we're talking about youth violence, and I'm not talking about gang intervention, because oftentimes, you get a gang member and then
right.
I'm talking about really being able to speak to these young, easily influenced young men and women of color in our neighborhoods, and being able to impact change by saying, listen, man, this was my experience with what you're dealing with what you're seeing in your neighborhood. You don't have to be a frontline gang member to suffer the effects of PTSD and maybe whatever that will do to you by coming up in a community. What have been some of the things that you found out over the course of your time that would surprise maybe some people as to the contributing effects or the contributing causes of some of the waywardness we see in youth?
Well, I'm going to get to that, and hopefully in a pretty direct line. As I talked about the protective factors and the risk factors, one of the reasons why I sound so smart up here, and I hope I do,
You do. For sure.
is because I've had the benefit and the honor of working with young people, like over the last couple of years, with intention to hear what their perspectives are on what are the root causes of the violence. What do they want to see as solutions? What is it that they need from us? And even just a couple of days ago, as this is National Youth Violence Prevention Week, I was a part of a forum of young people. There was about 7 or 8 different youth groups, all presenting on the work that they're doing. And this was not arranged, man. Every single one of them talked about the need for better and earlier access to mental health.
Okay.
Right? Every single one of the groups. And it was groups from Southwest Denver, Park Hill, far northeast, Northwest Denver. They were all represented, and they all said the same thing. And it was not in the sense of we're out here mentally ill or we're dealing with mental disorders. It was saying we just want to know as much as we can about our mental health and how to practice effective self-care as we do about, say, physical health, right? And when we look at, all of them said that violence is an outcome. Violence is an outcome of a person who is having a mental illness moment. It could be long-term chronic mental illness, or it could just be a person who was fed up with whatever stresses they were experiencing and chose violence as the way to deal with that stress in that moment.
Right.
We need to figure out how to be supportive of our peers in those moments, and figure out how to be preventative on the front end to say, look, I see something's going on with you, and be able to offer the proper care. I think about going back to your root question, first question about like hip hop, DMX, right? Rest in peace. The man just passed away.
Rest in peace.
He was very upfront and very transparent about his emotional and mental struggles and the demons that he was facing. And thank God he had music as an outlet, but then he also was self-medicating,
Right.
in a very toxic way. A lot of our youth are doing the same thing,
For sure.
because they don't feel as if they have someone they can go to be open and honest about the struggles that they're feeling, because they feel like they're going to be stigmatized. They're going to feel like they're ostracized. In many of our cultures of color, both black, brown, indigenous people, we look at the need for mental health treatment as being weak.
As a weakness.
Because we equate that as that's just part of the journey of being black, brown, native, indigenous, and it's not true. And so it's I hope I answered your question.
No, you did,
in that,
and I'm glad that you touched on mental health and seeking help with that. Not something that you just handle within the confines of the home or confines of the family. Has often been stigmatized as something weak. You know what I mean? We don't go see counselors. We don't go see counselors in the hood.
But that's been a problem of ours. Like we didn't grow up like that. I didn't grow up thinking it was cool. First of all, I didn't grow up knowing about a therapist, let alone thinking it was okay to do that. But and that's why Jonathan McMillan is so important too, because I feel like we should preach that. Like I preach that now.
Yeah.
we did the Power Up Summit,
You know
like
what I'm saying?
2 or 3 years
Yeah.
ago. So a whole summit based on providing access to mental health resources for our black men, so that we could be the leaders that we
Yes.
need to be, healthy, whole, productive leaders for our community, for our children, for our women. It's like
That was actually the first time. True story.
yeah.
Remember, I reached out to you about. That was the first
Yeah.
time I even really learned about therapy, was with the session with him.
Yeah.
It can
Power
change your
Up
life.
Summit,
It
yep.
can change your
You know what
life.
I'm saying?
Real quick before we let you go, Jonathan, people who want to be involved with Park Hill Strong or any other resources that you might have, let people know where they can get in touch.
Man, the best thing I could do, and I want to bring all focus back to the Mending
Mending
Roots
Roots.
telephone. There's going to be a list of community organizations that are doing incredible work, most of them on a shoestring budget. and even outside of that, sometimes it's not necessarily monetary funds that they need. They need capital. They need people to step up and volunteer. They need people who will open up their spaces for these youth to get mental health services, to get tutoring, to get STEM, all of these things that will, again, make our kids healthy, safe, and productive adults at some point. So mendingrootsforest.com. Check out the website. Drop some dollars.
Drop some dollars. We already hit 10% of our goal. Donate. And it doesn't just last for the extent of this telethon. You can always go to mendingrootsforest.com/donate and put your money where your mouth is. That's my mantra for the day. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time.
Hey man, it's a pleasure. I want to stay here all day with you.
Susie Q. Smith up next. Yeah, we need to.
Hello all, this is Susie Q. Smith from Denver, Colorado, specifically Park Hill, reading for the Mending Roots Forest Project event, the live stream Mending Roots to Cultivate Communities. This poem that I'm going to share with you is called For Cedric. During senior year of high school, a boy that I grew up with was shot at a local shopping mall. The next day at school, a girl I had never spoken to approached me, concern in her brow, asking sweetly, "How's your friend?" I was moved by her empathy. An exotic bird in a beige land of suburban tract houses, I answered, "He's still in critical condition, but we're all praying. My grandmother is down at the hospital now." She, head bobbing hair flip, smile shifting into quiet knife, replied, "Well, I still say if he was a gang member, he deserved to get shot." This poem is for Michelle Albright and What We Deserve. You deserved both of my hands around your throat that day and the shaking I gave you. You probably still live in some suburb somewhere in a house just like the one you grew up in. You are probably married to an insurance agent who played high school ball and still reminisces when he drinks too much on the weekends. You are probably a banker, a mortgage lender who gets rich by manipulating poor people. You probably have 2 kids who look exactly like you. You probably think that they deserve the best. Michelle. You never knew Cedric, never saw the bruises he or his sister wore to Sunday school, never tried not to fall asleep in the all-night prayer sessions the adults in our families held in hopes of protecting them from their stepfather, never prayed for him to get saved. You never curled inside the kindness of his mother, never grew roots in the forest of her song. You did not come to our reunions or revivals, never heard the desperation in our melody. You have never been unable to afford the arrogance of your godlessness, Michelle. You never saw Cedric smile. You never wept or prayed for him. You never tried to beat him in a foot race. You never knew why his manhood was so urgent or why it cost him so much blood to achieve. Michelle, I want you to know that he did survive, and that when he recovered, he reclaimed his manhood the only way he knew how, that he was 17 when they locked him away for good, and the last time I saw him was at his mother's funeral. We were 18 then. They did not unshackle his hands nor his feet as he rattled to the pulpit to read a poem he had written for his dead mother, and all I could think about was you and what you said he deserved, Michelle. I still see his aunties and uncles and cousins sometimes. He is his family's phantom limb, but I know better than to stare or talk about it. My family has missing teeth of its own, Michelle. I'm a mother now, and every night when I listen at my daughter's door, I can tell through the door the difference between asleep breathing, and awake pretending to be asleep breathing. I've kissed her head and toes, cleaned her messes, read her books, wrote her lullabies, taught her to ride a bicycle and to swim, helped with homework, talked down teachers, spoken to the mothers of bullies, spoken to bullies, prayed and prayed and prayed. Michelle, I taught her to read. I taught her to speak up, even to me. I have washed and matched her socks over and over again, have had to send her out into a world that does not value her life, that would tell her something about inferiority and it belonging to her, about her body and identity and it belonging to them, that pretends that black lives are not as carefully cultivated as white lives, as if she is not the most loved child that has ever lived. Michelle, I wonder what you think she deserves, Michelle. I know Cedric's mother felt the same way about her son that I do about my daughter. Michelle, what do you teach your babies? Michelle, do you know what a victim is? Do you think they always look like you? Michelle, have you ever felt like a statistic? Michelle, do you know they make whole juries just like you? Michelle, do you know the smack of a gavel can crack a spirit in half? Michelle, do you have a spirit? Michelle, we all deserve better than this. Even you.
My name is Jason McBride, founder of the McBride Impact and Secondary Violence Prevention Specialist for the Struggle of Love Foundation, and I'm mending roots to cultivate communities. The very first gang-related shooting was Cameron Smith in 1986, right in Park Hill. Matter of fact, a block away from the Park Hill Golf Course, the very first one in 1986, all that time ago. And we haven't addressed the problem because it's still happening. Look at last year, the month of July, we lost 16 people in the first 2 weeks, which is that's astounding to me when you start to talk about those kind of things. And these are all youth. These are all young people that died. The first week we lost 9 people in 6 days. The second week we lost 8 people in 7 days. I don't know what to say because we've had opportunities in decades to solve this problem and we decide that we don't. There's always something more important. But what could be more important than, saving kids? McBride Impact, we're set up under the 4 E's. We call them the 4 E's, which are equity, equality, employment, and education. So we try to tackle those things and help young people in our community, black and brown people in our community with those things, with job trainings, employment. The causes from youth violence, they range from bad schools, lack of parenting and supervision, just nothing for these kids to really get into. We look at these kids and say, well, how can these young people be so violent? Well, they live in violent places and they experience violent things. And if you go through those things on a regular basis, that violence is going to be inherited into you, and then you're going to perpetrate some violent things also. And, young people in our community are actually our only natural resource because we don't own any gas or any diamond mines or any of those things, right? We just have young people that we hope will go on to school and bring some of those things they learn back into our communities and help us. National Youth Violence Prevention Week is a week where we're all focused on eliminating youth violence or reducing it, or trying to figure out the factors that lead to it. And I think that's one thing we don't really do a lot of. We just see the problem and attack what we think is the cause of the problem, and that's usually a person. But there are other things that lead these young people to do some of the things that they do, and we need to start to examine those things. These kids don't realize how great they can be because they're not being shown that. They only are being shown one thing, and that's how to purchase an AK-47 on the street and use it on somebody you don't like, or somebody you think you don't like because they don't wear the same color you do, or identify with what you identify with. So that's my job, and I wish that some people could just see that, what I do, just that part of it. And I think it would change a lot of people's opinions on what we're dealing with right now.
I think that's it.
Thank you. I don't know if I could take no more. That's just the truth. The Mending Roots Forest Project is something that I thought about, last year when I talked to some of the people who had taken over the golf course, and they were, they were definitely on board with doing this. This is something that I think can provide some healing to some of these families that have gone through this. I think is definitely a way for people in the community to kind of heal with some of the trauma that they've gone through. A lot of these kids come from these communities, have grown up in these communities. These people in these communities know these young people, and we're not talking about 20-year-olds. I mean, we're talking about 12, 13, 14-year-old kids that are really the brunt of, taking the brunt of gang violence in this city. So these are the ones that are dying. And this project being a representation of all of those kids, it just gives families a place where they can go and connect and mourn. And this is just going to be a beautiful place that is set up in honor of a lot of these kids that we haven't protected or done the things that we needed to do for them, and they're no longer with us. And I think this is a way for us to pay homage to them, give them, their families, a little bit of just a little bit of love. Like, honestly, I mean, these people need love. They've lost a lot, and so this is a way for us as community members to say, hey, we love you, you're important. Your young person was important, and they won't be forgotten. So we definitely are encouraging people to get involved and donate and help us with the planting of these 200 trees that are going to represent young people in this community that have fell victim to youth violence.
Halfway through hour number 2. Donate now, donate now, donate now. Go to mendingrootsforest.com/donate to contribute your funds to such a worthy cause as planting 200 trees to commemorate the lives of youth lost to gun violence at the hands of other youth. And right now, I am joined by, I want to get this right, Dr. Sarah Goodrum, Senior Research Associate for the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence Institute of Behavioral Science at the University of Colorado Boulder. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And the conversation that we're going to have is an interesting one for me, because you have been researching the effect that green space can have on this very topic.
Yeah.
First of all, again, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
And second of all, how did this study come about?
Well, we have been conducting a lot of research over the last 20 years on the ways that we can better prevent violence, both in schools and communities. So we have partnered with the Centers for the Study and Prevention of the Center for Disease Control to try to bridge the gap between research and practice in communities so that we can prevent violence.
To have the CDC involved changes the narrative, right? Because when we think about violence in amongst youth, and obviously for me, it's always going to usually fall under communities like my own. Disease was never a thought. It's behavioral.
Yes.
It's behavioral.
Yes.
Socioeconomic.
Yeah.
These are, for the CDC to be involved, these are things that are being taken into different contexts, and the healing effects of outdoors. When we were off camera, I was talking to you about just what green space has done for my life as an adult. What are some of the things that you guys have found out with this research?
Yeah, what we know from almost 80 years of research on how neighborhood conditions impact crime is that the appearance of things matters.
Okay.
The way things look in communities matters both for how people feel in that environment psychologically, but also for the rates of crime in the community. Mm-hmm. So by spearheading an effort like this one to improve the greening of the community, you're actually having an impact on people's quality of life, their mental health, their anxiety, their levels of depression, and you're also going to be improving the way people engage in the space. It's going to create places for people to be more physically active. And also, it'll change how people interact with each other. Changing the appearance of things changes how we are able to engage with each other.
Malcolm Gladwell in The Tipping Point references, I believe it was in Brownsville, New York, a police captain that made it a point of urban beautification, just stripping down, you know, some of the things that you're used to seeing in a New York neighborhood, the graffiti on the walls, and the profound effect that that had on the behavior of many of the repeat offenders that that they were seeing in that particular precinct. And it's something that, you know, I guess it's like, oh yeah, if you're, you know, what's the saying? If you look better, you'll feel better, you play better, you know what I mean? And it's like, but it's not something that's often thought about. That an urban experience can be mentally taxing just from an aesthetic, just from an aesthetic perspective. And that's not even taking into effect what the out of doors, what real outside can do. I'm talking about trees and grass and fresh air can actually do for the mental state of a lot of people.
Physical well-being, mental health, how we engage with each other, having green space to go out and throw a frisbee, to engage in football practice is really beneficial for young people so that they can have these kinds of pro-social, what we think of in the field of criminology as pro-social opportunities for engagement.
Pro-social opportunity, go deeper. What exactly does that mean?
So we oftentimes will make a distinction between pro-social and antisocial behavior. And when we address the environmental conditions, when we green space, we create more opportunities for pro-social engagement, positive interactions, where people are supportive of each other, where people can exercise and play games.
See, that's, you know, because oftentimes, you know, you'll hear about the program where inner city youth are taken, you know, we used to go to Ballarat when I was young, you know, and they take us up in the mountains, you know, they teach you about, you know, natural habitats and what type of wildlife, but, you know, it's almost like it's not real. It's a field trip away. And then you're brought back to the same hell, so to speak, that you were, you know, raised in for so many years. And bringing out the out of doors, or bringing, you know, Ballarat to the inner city is something that is, I think, desperately needed for all of our mental well-being.
Absolutely, particularly in this era of COVID, where we need easy ways to get to those green areas.
I'm glad that you brought COVID up, because it was a thought that I had, and I wrote it down. I'm like, kind of an unpopular opinion, but I did read about a study of the spike in violent crime since quarantine began. And, you know, it's no secret that humans are very social creatures. Social interaction is something that we thrive on. You take that away from people, and you know, you might have to deal with someone who's not ready to deal with themselves, and then the worst of them comes out when they are out amongst the rest of society. Taking people away from outside, though, vitamin D that you get from the sun, like these natural curative effects that outside can have, it's just, it can be devastating to the mental state.
It really can. I think with the pandemic, what we've seen is not only an increase in social isolation, so that people who might have grievances or difficulties or mental health issues, they're not getting the social interaction that they need, so that people can say, are you doing okay? Is there something that I can do to help? It's also really impeding our ability to see when people are in trouble or in crisis, and then be able to connect to them. Green spaces would help to improve those opportunities for interacting with other people, helping us to get out of our houses and have those kinds of social interactions that can be incredibly beneficial to well-being.
Okay, Doc, let's talk about your personal experience. What brought you to this area of study?
You know, I started in the field of criminology really with an interest in trying to understand why people do bad things. And I think what I've found along the way is that it's really complicated. And I've found myself both interested in why people engage in what we think of as antisocial behavior, but also what effect does that have on the people who are the victims of that antisocial behavior. A lot of my research looks at loss to homicide. and looking at how the criminal justice system's involvement in a murder case can sometimes really complicate and aggravate the bereavement process. One of the things that I think is wonderful about this project is the attention that'll be paid to those that have been lost to homicide.
Absolutely.
And particularly in this time period when we've seen in Denver alone a 50% increase in homicide cases over the last year. And that increase really started before the pandemic, but it escalated during the pandemic. So being able to honor those that we've lost and give that recognition is incredibly meaningful to families. What I know from studying people who've had this loss experience is that they often just want to be able to say the person's name.
Yeah.
They want people to remember. They want people to know who they lost and what that loss meant to them. And so this project really can bring a lot of value to that and also raise awareness.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, a headstone is one thing, and a cemetery is one thing. There's sort of not even sort of there's a bit of a dark feel to that, right? There's a cloud that hangs over that.
Yeah.
But planting a tree in memory of someone is profoundly impactful. I think in ways that we won't even really be able to, contextualize or quantify until you watch it bear itself out and watch the fruits of this labor bear themselves out as we plant 200 trees and then we turn 200 trees into 400 trees and really turn spaces that were once bereft of, I think, that type of green hope, that green space hope, into transform them into forests that represent the same. How can people find out more about the research that you're doing and being a part? If you have any
Yeah, sure. You're welcome to email me at sarah.goodrum@colorado.edu or go to our website at the Center for the Study and Prevention of Violence at the University of Colorado Boulder. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think right now, soon at least, we're going to have a caller that's going to join us here on the telethon. But if you want to share your story, you can call us now. Call now to share your story. 720-337-4201. 720-337-4201. Thank you so much, Dr.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Great job.
Yeah,
Great
thank
job.
you.
I am the mother of Destiny Kivante Lachelle Litt. Destiny transitioned from us August 2019, and I am mending roots to cultivate communities.
Hi, I'm Troy Grimes, father of Destiny Litt, and I am mending roots to cultivate communities.
Hi, my name is Devin Grimes. I'm the oldest brother of Destiny, and I am mending roots to cultivate communities.
My name is Maggie Mueller, and I'm the care coordinator for the Teen Violence Risk Assessment and the Youth Violence Prevention Center of Denver, and we are mending roots to cultivate communities. The Teen Violence Risk Assessment is a tool for the early identification of youth who would benefit from evidence-based programming and services to prevent their future involvement in violence. This tool is open to the public, and we also provide connections to community-based resources for anyone in the Denver metro area. Please check it out at tvradenver.org or shoot us an email with questions at info@tvradenver.org. Thank you so much.
And we're back. And we go to the phones. We are joined right now by Aiden Lawrence. Aiden, thank you for joining us on the telethon. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. Tell me your story.
Well, where do I start?
At the beginning is usually the best part.
Okay, it depends on what you mean by the beginning.
The beginning of your particular story and how this effort and this particular subject has affected you, your family, and just what it means to you to be a part of the Mending Roots Forest Project.
Okay, so my son, Aiden Lawrence, was killed in August of 2019. It was a part of 3 murders that happened that night in Denver. He happened to be the juvenile that was killed. And that's, you know, pretty much where we're at with it. You know, he was 14 years old when he was killed. So fairly young child.
Yeah.
You know, and it's impacted my family greatly. The amount of violence that's going on with the youth in Denver prompted me to leave. I just moved to a town in Arizona 2 months ago because it just seems that the issue does not cease. Children are dying, and you know, it no longer feels safe there.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, my condolences, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Far too often, you know, we are hearing about, you know, we just had a young man in Chicago, sure at the hands of the police, but Adam Toledo, a 13-year-old young man, nonetheless, another one taken out by gun violence. What message, Autumn, if I may, do you have? And I understand that you relocated. And what message do you have that you want to share with people where youth gun violence is concerned?
It's like I always say, there's so many moving parts to this, right? Denver in itself and Colorado as a state has grown so much in an economic sense, right? Where it leaves those who are, you know, lower income impacted by it. And I think that's why we see such a rise with youth in these deaths. And, you know, it's a part of the system that makes an impact on it as well. You have children who go to juvenile hall because of, you know, minor instances where they're introduced to gangs, they're introduced to drugs. It's a whole lot of things going on, and we seem to reject these communities where it happens and push them off as this is just where it happens, this is just what it's, you know, supposed to happen, these kids are just thugs, they run rampant, you know. It goes back to, it will never be fixed until from the top down everyone cares. Gun violence, and just not with gang violence or police violence, there's suicides that are, you know, surrounded, you know, with this plague. And I don't want to touch on, like, you know, gun safety or anything, but, you know, that's a part of it as well. And my message would be for individuals to just take this seriously and, you know, not cast on these, you know, youth and make them out to be people who are, you know, who they're not. Like that young man in Chicago, and it's coming out now that, you know, someone in the police union is saying that that their police officers did what they needed to do. That's just because you're pretty much, when it comes down to people of color, you dispose of them. They're, you know, you don't care about their lives.
It's a very profound statement that you make, and I thank you. And once again, we all grieve with you. Our condolences go out to you and your family, and the best to you in your new residence there in Arizona. And thank you for contributing your voice to this conversation.
You're welcome.
If you'd like to be a part of the conversation, share your story, you can call us at 720-337-4201, 720-337-4201. 01. Mending Roots to Cultivate Communities Telethon, right here from the Buell Community Media Center, Denver Community Media Studios. I do believe that that this cause that we're here for is one that's a now issue. So donate, and donate now. Call your friends, let your friends know. mendingrootsforest.com/donate. DJ K-Tone's in the building. I am Oren Lamena. And I do believe now, hold on one second. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have contributed to such a worthy cause. Westside Partners. This is something that the Hollering Group, this is just something that, to see corporate money and corporate interest taking time out to look at such a profound and devastating issue as youth gun violence means the world. And it should open the doors for you to do the same. So make sure you go and you donate now at mendingrootsforest.com/donate. If you would like to have your story, told, and you'd like to contribute to the conversation, obviously you can reach us here in the studio. Make sure that on the eve of the Columbine Massacre, that you take into perspective that we're talking about the future. We're talking about young people. And you've heard it referred to as a health issue, which it is. And there's no better time than now for all of us to point our feet in the right direction and contribute to a worthy cause, and something that will reverberate in terms of this forest that will be planted in Park Hill throughout time, because these trees aren't going nowhere. And we can turn 200 trees into 400 trees real easy if you donate. Again, mendingrootsforest.com to donate. Sil, are we ready to go to our... Now we have some live spoken word artistry brought to you by Menace Port. Take it away.
Facts. Hello and welcome aboard. Today we'll discuss rifles, reading, and seats on the board. Votes will be cast by scorecards. Those that have cash and those that have cards will begin discussion. But first, brought to you by Death in Numbers is Worth a Lot, a terrorist organization group built to influence who you think you are. Fact 1, adults are not always right. Fact 2, adults are big-ass kids. Fact 3, kids are small adults. And with that being said, anybody can get them governmental hands and fall victim to sociological warfare. No fair, even the microanalytics of your experience and emotions is exploited for profits. No fair, even the microanalytics of your experience and emotions is exploited for profits. Hands up, said the kids in grade school imitating the video game's hottest character. Pay me, said the manufacturer. The more, the merrier, said the payee of chaos. I'm a cold piece, but this piece is freezing, said society. And the little sponge danced, soaking up a variety of personas. So how to prevent war amongst the children, you ask? Better yet, how did we get here? Watch the news. What's the most common response to, well, anything, everything, with violence? With kindness and respect, no, you didn't blame the calf for drinking the milk and ask it where it was raised, knowing damn well you're its mom. Where is the yellow caution tape around guns to learn? Consciously realize this piece of steel plays God with no inner determinants or input from the owner, as bullets don't have names. Hello again, and welcome back to reality, where actually the cash you bring will never be worth your life to me. The seats we sell on our board are pardoned and lobbied in hotels you can't find on maps. Sponsored by Death in Numbers is Worth a Lot, a terrorist organization group built to influence who you think you are. So far from yourself and closer to me. Fact 1, kids perform learned behavior. Fact 2, kids turn into adults. Fact 3, this piece, mad cold, going on to show, better yet prove. The guns we traded each other for are marketed back to us and have often been, always been a force forced against us. Faintly I hear a historic story of forgiveness, for they know not what they did. Oblivious, ignorant bliss, what part of society has not been a makeshift plot of false PTA meeting votes, and you've never been afforded the price of ballot? Voting on bubblegum jars over blood, and somehow we've lost our touch to tell a child that gun was made, gave to kill you. That gun came to slaughter your future before your birth, and after you die too soon, it will continue to kill your brother. Somebody grab Bobby and Huey. Somebody explain this is not what they meant. Or are you a part of a marketing strategy that begun at Hello in the Motherlands? Today we've come to take your land, hand, and kids, and for this I give you the power of life or death. And over time I will revitalize this statement and strengthen it, knowing how you've always responded. Them governmental hands is timeless. Facts. So my name is Mac. I also go by Malcolm Ennis. I'm going to invite someone up on stage with me. I'm also the owner and CEO of Minisport LLC. And this is Dunia Shadi joining me for the second poem.
Confusion and chaos secure the safety of tomorrow while hollow tips fly through the classroom.
Was that the movie or
Get down?
Thought the movie crowd?
I found hate seems to follow you,
taunts you to be angry.
How could I not when statistics show that guns sell more than candy?
How much?
Halloween candy made $2 billion and went up 17% over the course of a year, while firearms made $18 billion and increased to $64 billion in a year.
1/3 of children in America's urban violent neighborhoods have PTSD at twice the rate a troop of returning. 1/3 of children in America's urban violent neighborhoods have PTSD at twice the rate of a troop returning from war zones in Iraq. Hypothetically, let's say the turning point is adolescence. Hypothetically, let's say there are algorithms at play when playing and growing and learning, touching and doing and seeing.
You mean to tell me a water gun at the age of 5, military training on a PlayStation at 12, like people damn near have been conditioned, trained to pull the trigger from their environment?
The games we play as children turn into habits as adults, and most believe killers kill people, not guns. So who's the victim? If the people blame themselves, who will examine the system?
If people kill people, not guns, are we saying it's okay to punish whoever had the gun and did the crime at all times but never hold the maker accountable?
Following the yellow brick road of the poll and dollar amounts will account for answers.
In
other words,
if a cop gets charged for a murder, shouldn't the system for which produced it get charged as well?
If the people decided the war on guns was a war on them, how far, how deep would the issue go? As if the needle has been pulling the thread to a path of knockoff caskets. To laugh and linger in adolescence, not knowing you're always ripe for prime.
Assets given backwards.
Not as easy as acquiring plastic, and still we rise.
So wait. Let me clear this up. Toys are not toys, but marketing tactics to familiarize a subject early in life. Like, so if you give a kid a ball, it grows up to be Michael Jordan. You give a kid a dream, it grows up to be MLK. And guns kill people, or people kill people, or people kill guns. People kill guns? America determines futures at birth, and there are records of children dying at the barrels of real guns for playing with toy guns.
Patriarchal playpens, concept of a happy childhood. You place the standards for smiles. You load the toy aisle, then host the rifle revival.
Allegory toys and tales of cops and robbers.
Once called runners and catchers.
Yours, Simon Says, as the teacher turns Simon Demands as the corrections officer.
We,
the people, demand a say in what is given to us as a good time. False is the freedom to even take what you give, as small as a trinket.
The very epitome of American culture through ricocheting bullets.
War-torn elementary hallways.
We have always focused on securing tomorrow, never right now.
We, the people, have risen to demand freedom from a society built to hunt and exploit us, regardless of class, status, race, or fame.
We start today at the roots.
Statistics prove incorporating health and well-being into an individual's environment emphasize positive factors that contribute to less or reduce gun violence. Point 1 in the Mending Roots Project, disrupt psychological warfare surrounding youth gun violence. Freedom starts at mending in our community
and ends at severing roots from persecution.